Chile, I honestly would say, is pretty safe. Like, I never really felt scared there at all, and that's saying something from a girl's point of view, because you normally don't want to be walking out late at night alone, or in this case with a companion, but I never really felt scared. There's like a few times when I felt very uneasy, but it is a great place. You're gonna love it. It's so much fun. Let's see, stories. Okay, so the weather there can be kind of crazy. Oh, nope. Yes, I'm gonna go with this one. Okay, so the weather there can be kind of crazy, and obviously you know how Chile is just like that long, skinny country, and we're right on like the fault line. So obviously you can have some earthquakes down there. Um, so I never been in an earthquake before, and I was in 2 earthquakes while I was there. It wasn't big ones like they were called. I want to say they were called like earth shakes. They were tiny. So and these little earth shakes. So the first one was actually my training, and we were doing 12 semanas, which is like 12 weeks, like the training program, and all of a sudden the house is shaking. Or technically not the house yet, but like our room was shaking and we were shaking. We were just like going back and forth. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is this? What did I sign up for? And then like our closet's doors were just like going open and close. And then all of a sudden the house started shaking. And so I lived in a house with 2 other sisters. And at this time, there was one from Brazil and the other one was from the United States. And then my trainer from Bolivia. And so we were all just like in our separate rooms because we were studying. And then all of a sudden, after this, I kind of like jumped up out of my seat like, oh my gosh, we're going to die kind of thing. Because I've never been in an earthquake, shake, whatever you want to call it. And then my companion was just looking at me like, what are you doing? Sit back down. And all of a sudden the other sisters called us, and they're like, I don't even know why they didn't just come to our door, but they called us, and they're like, hey, hermanas. And we're like, yeah? Did you feel that? It was like the most chillest conversation. And I was just like, don't we have to get out of the house? Because what if the house falls down? Because it was not a very sturdy house. Yeah, not at all. That's another story from the same house. Okay. It was not a very sturdy house. And so my commander was just like, no, we're good. The house hasn't fallen over yet, so we can still stay in here. And I was like, what kind of logic is that? If the house doesn't fall over, we can stay in the house? It was she was hilarious. So we decided not to leave the house with this shaking of the house from this earth shake. And all of a sudden I was thinking, oh wait, since we're right by the ocean, we should be worried about tsunamis as well, just in case. Because I've had experiences with that, and I tried trying to explain it to them, and they're just like, no, why do we need to worry about that? And I'm just sitting there like, oh my gosh, this might be the day I'm gone from Earth. I'm just like, well, at least I'm happy. But it was so fun because afterwards, when I was able to, like a few weeks later, honestly, when I was able to explain myself a little bit better, I told my companion, she's like, oh yeah, that actually would have been smart if we left the house. And I was like, yes, it would have been smart. But we were safe. But so after my training, we our uncle got whitewashed, which is basically removing all the missionaries that are there and putting of your area and putting new missionaries in, so it's like a clean slate. So they took out the sisters and put 2 elders there, or maybe it was just it was 2 elders. It was 2 elders there, and so they were in the same house. In our house, I got to hear this story later, and when I actually heard it, I laughed so hard I was crying because I was like, well, good thing that did not happen to us. So, obviously, Chile is pretty developed as a country, but there's lots of areas where it's you can still see like the poverty, and it's very humbling to see that. And Ancud was definitely one of the places. And in our house, like in the middle of the house, it's just like dipped down. Honestly, I don't know how the house stood when the little earthshake happened, because even one of the sisters who was like sitting in the hole, she was like, yeah, I thought I was a goner for a moment, because I thought like the house would just open up and I'd just be like sucked in. But that didn't happen, which was good. But this story is with the elders, when the elders were living in the house. We were at a zone meeting, and they were just like, oh man, guys, we have the most craziest story to tell you guys. And we're like, what? And he's like, does anyone know where Ancud is? And it's like, oh yeah, I do. That was my first area. That's where I like served, like my first area in the mission. And they're like, oh, you gotta hear this story. And I was like, oh no, what happened? And they said in the house they would hear these little, that kind of noise, okay? And they're just like, what is it? And it would go on constantly, not only a day or a few minutes or a few hours, but a few weeks at a time. And then one day, I don't remember if it was in the beginning of the day or at night, but the little wood pecking like noise, that kind of noise was really loud. And then all of a sudden, two of the elders just like screamed, and the other two elders like ran into their room and were like, oh my gosh, what happened? And apparently there were rats eating at the walls, and you just see all these rats coming out of the hole that they just ate, and all these elders just going like, oh my gosh, what do we do, just like freaking out. And when they explained that story, I was like, well, good thing that's an area for the elders now, because I'm pretty sure if we were in the house, I don't know what we would have done. But that was a very interesting experience to hear from them, because they were just like, yeah, we had to get like these logs. That's another thing. We had to get these logs from outside to really just start hitting the rats over the head with them so we won't get bitten and stay alive. And there was just like mad chaos, and I'm like, oh, that would have been very fun to watch, but at the same time I was glad I did not live in that house anymore. That was a funny one. But don't worry, most of your housing is very safe, because the mission does check. After that, they had to move, obviously. Also, one of my other favorite things in the mission is, because of how cold it gets, you get to chop your own firewood. That might sound scary, but it is the funnest thing to do. I absolutely loved it, because when I first had to, because I got there at the in the middle of September, and it was cold. It was really cold. And I remember lying in my bed, just shivering, and with my blankets on top, and I was in my sleeping bag and just still really cold. And then even in bed, you can just see the air, just your breath. And I'm just like, oh, it's too cold to get up, but you have to get up. And so you get up, and then you do your exercises, but then you can make fire as well. And with making fire, the best warmth ever. It is always just so warm, and it just fills the soul like the gospel. It's just amazing, because then you're warm spiritually and then warm physically, and you're just like, oh, this is amazing kind of thing. But chopping the wood was the best. I remember one time with one of my good companions, oh man, she didn't know how to chop wood or make fire in that sense, because she was new, she just got there, and I was like, okay, this is the best time to learn. And so we went outside, and we got our little wood blocks, and we put a piece of wood on top, and I showed her how to do it, and then I had her do it, because she obviously had to learn. And so it was great, because she was there in her position, ready with the axe over her shoulder, in this fun stance of okay, I think this is the right thing to do, but I'm just gonna go for it, and hopefully I don't cut off my leg, kind of thing. And so she goes, and as she swings the axe to hit the wood, she goes, hi-ya! And then she like hits the wood. But the thing is, the axe does not penetrate the wood at all. It just like touches it, and then the whole log falls over. And then she like stumbles over because she's like, oh, that was harder than I thought. But it was just really funny because, I mean, where else can you, I mean, obviously there's other places where you can chop wood, but this is amazing because you get to chop wood for warmth. And it's so much fun. It is so much fun because then you get to make fire, and then after you're planning for the night and you have like a few more minutes of downtime before you actually have to go to bed, and you can like turn off the lights, open the windows, look at the stars, have your fire right there, and eat like a brownie out of a mug kind of thing if you're really craving a brownie. And honestly, that's like the best thing because it feels like you're camping. It's great. There's also, yeah, there's so, you will get so many great stories from your mission. It's going to be a wonderful experience. Oh, but also be careful with like, because I did say there was fleas, but also be careful for the spiders because there are some very poisonous spiders on there that you don't want to get bitten by. One time my companion got bit by a spider, and it like totally laid eggs in her. Grossest pictures ever, but cool story. And I was like, so try not to get bit by a spider. Yeah, one time we were on exchanges, and during the night, apparently I got bit by a spider on my arm, and I didn't realize that until we were on the bus, like, dropping off our companions so we can, like, switch back and get back to, like, normal. And all of a sudden I, like, look at my arm, and I'm like, oh no. That's not good. Because, you know, normally in the States, the spider bites, it's just, like, a tiny little red bump, and you're just like, oh, okay, whatever. But this one, it, like, blistered over the bite, so it was like a huge blister, but then also I noticed that my arm was super swollen, and I'm just like, well, spiders are not my favorite things in the world anymore. And I was like slightly freaking out because my arm was just expanding, and I'm just like, oh no, what do I do? So we called the nurse, and I was with the companion, and she got bit by a spider like 4 or 5 times. And like when she called the nurse, she's like, oh yeah, so we have a spider bite to talk about. And she's like, oh no, like the nurse was going like, oh no, what did you do now? And she's like, actually, luckily it's not me, it's my companion this time. And I'm just like sitting there just like, okay, yep, it's me. It's like, I don't know what's gonna happen to my arm, but it was so funny because like we had to go to the clinic because they don't really have like doctor's offices. They only have like clinics or the hospital. Hospitals are pretty sketchy. Stay away from them in the sense of don't get sick to go there. But when we were at the clinic, I remember them just like looking at it. They poked it a few times and they're like, well, can you feel your arm? I'm like, yes. And they're like, can you? They just look like, well, hopefully this isn't anything too serious because there's a spider there that if it bites you, not to scare you, but you can die kind of thing. And so they like decided to like, you know what, let's just pop the blister and call it good. And I'm just like, what about like the venom that's causing my arm to swell? They're just like, don't worry about it yet. You know, if it's still there in the next few hours, come back. And I'm just like, okay, well, this is great. So we told like the mission nurse all this stuff, and she's like, hermana, it's okay. I'm just like, thank you. And she's just like, that's the most weirdest bite that she can think of. Good thing it wasn't like the really poisonous kind, because she's just like, just try to get antibiotics. They gave you a prescription, right? And I was like, no, they didn't. And she was just like, oh, that's a little difficult. I'm just like, yeah. So, yeah. But sometimes those things happen, and they're really fun. You just gotta go with the flow of it. Just have fun. And just enjoy yourself.